I'm gonna give this lighting a try. See if the cars stay quiet in New York. See, my toilet starts singing. So many new factors. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my new apartment. This is a temporary, maybe semi-permanent filming setup. We are slowly but surely getting the apartment together, and I'm very excited to show bits in other videos. This video is not about my apartment, although I'm very proud of my beautiful bookshelf that we put together a couple days ago, and that I have a place to kind of film videos for now. It could change. Who's to say? Who knows? But things have been a little wacky for the last month. I think I maybe put up my first booktube video a month ago at this point. That's what it feels like to me, because of course I said, let me revamp my YouTube channel when I'm moving. Smart. So we're back, and today I am doing my June wrap-up. I do kind of want to go back and do wrap-ups of all the books that I have read this year, so maybe I'll sprinkle those in, because I don't want to do a big yearly wrap-up. That's going to be so many books, so I feel like if I break it into chunks, but I would kind of like to let y'all know what I've been reading in 2021. So a month later, here is my June wrap-up. Let's go. Okay, so first up, I was reading this book at the end of May and kind of finished it up between June 1st and June 3rd, which is why it's on this list. And it is the third book in the Fortuna Sworn series. I have not talked about this series on my TikTok because truthfully, I did not enjoy it. I know I made it through all three books and was like, not for me. But the first and second book, I was mildly entertained. It is a this is where it gets confusing. It's a portal fantasy romance. So it does take place between the real world and a fae court. So in the first book, it mainly takes place at the fae court, but then the second and third book mostly take place in the real world, but then go between the court a lot, which is why it gets a little confusing as to where it falls in the fantasy category. I'm not going to go too into it just because I didn't enjoy it, and I personally would not recommend these books. The third book just got really overwhelming. It felt like there were too many things with the plot trying to happen at once that honestly could have been spread out throughout multiple books to make the series even longer. I do think there's a fourth book coming out. I won't be reading it, but we're starting strong. So then after I finished that book and I was kind of trying to plan out the books that I wanted to read in June, I decided that I exclusively wanted to read books that were really exciting to me and were like 5-star reads. And I almost achieved that. Almost all of these are 5-star reads for me. And I had a wonderful month. It was truly a great reading month. After Deadly Dreams, I really enjoyed my reading month. So then I read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I loved it so much I read it twice. I do have a review on my TikTok of this. And just to do a light summary, if you know anything about the Taylor Jenkins Reid world, there is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I also read in June, Daisy Jones and the Six, and now Malibu Rising. Filming in New York. And they all take place in the same universe, and there are some character crossovers. So in Evelyn Hugo, you meet Mick Riva, and his family is the center of Malibu Rising. So you get two aspects of the book. You get this one day in August in the 1980s when the children of Mick Riva are throwing their annual party, but then we also get flashbacks to the entire childhood, the meeting of Mick Mike and his wife June and their love story. So that kind of chronicles the history up until this day where they're throwing this party and all of these emotions and things are coming to a head, which culminates in the house being on fire at the end of the night, which you find out on page 1 of the book. So the whole thing is leading towards this fire, who lit it, what's going on. And I really enjoyed it. The entire book is done through what I would kind of call a revolving third-person perspective. So it's not that each chapter switches POVs, the entire thing is constantly roaming. So, you know, Nina is talking to her siblings and the whole conversation kind of starts in Nina's perspective, but then slowly shifts to what HUD is thinking and then how Jay is responding. And it was so successful. I listened to the audiobook, which was narrated by Julia Whalen, and I adored it. I thought it was really fantastic and really successful. I also just love the way that Taylor is able to create these stories about socialites and celebrities without making it super glamorous. They are very much real people. I feel like we're slowly getting to a place where we're realizing that we don't need to be putting celebrities on a pedestal because they're people too. I don't know if it's gonna come off weird, but she really gets to like the heart of these people. It is not the surface level stuff that the media is showing and the persona that they're putting off to the public. You're really getting to know these characters as they are at their core. And I just thought it was really fantastic. So fantastic that I read it twice in June. Then I read The Witch King by H.E. Edgman, and I had anticipated this read. It didn't quite reach where I had hoped that it would, but I still found it very entertaining and intriguing, and I will see if I end up reading the sequel. So this book is about Wyatt, who used to live in the Fae world, was engaged to the Fae prince, and after a series of events, ran away to the human world and transitioned. And the book starts with the Fae prince Emir, I think that's how you say it. Emir. Finding Wyatt and realizing he has missed out on so much of Wyatt's life since he left, bringing him back to the Fae world and coming to terms with the events that happened before Wyatt left, why Wyatt left, and things that have happened since. And I think for me, there wasn't enough, what's the word I'm looking for? Balance between action and conversation. In a lot of the fantasy books that I read, I like to be shown things instead of told them, but I also need a lot of conversation. So while the conversation writing was really well done, I didn't feel like there was enough showing and action to complement that. And that's just a me thing. Otherwise, I did really like the characters and the character development. So we will see if I end up reading the sequel. Then I read Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and it's the first Hades and Persephone retelling that I have ever read, and I really enjoyed it. I really like Katie Roberts' writing. She is a romance writer who really falls into the erotica niche of romance, genre of romance. I don't know what the like subcategories, is that what they're called? And Neon Gods, I would assume it would fall under erotica, but there was so much plot along with the spice that I'm unsure. Personally, I don't know where it's shelved in the bookstore. I listened to the audiobook, which was just okay as far as audiobooks go. I don't know that I would necessarily say listen to the audiobook over reading the physical book, but I really like Katie's writing. I love how developed her characters are and how much plot she can put into kind of shorter books. And the way that she writes sexual content is fantastic. There is consent, there is contraception, and both of her main characters are queer. And it was just really exciting. And she kind of kept the magical aspects of the myth retelling to a minimum. There was definitely like something was going on in this world, but it is certainly not the main event, and no one can explain it, which I haven't encountered recently in sort of like magical realism or even low fantasy books. Normally the magic is really quite prevalent, everybody knows about it. So it was kind of exciting to read a book that definitely had something behind the curtain, but no one could explain. So it was just kind of, you didn't really think about it, and the focus was on the like contemporary aspect of it, which was a lot of fun. I did reread One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I had read this twice in May because I was given an advanced listener copy through Libro FM, and then I listened to it again because I was commuting to work at the beginning of June, and it was just a really great commute book. So really quickly, what is this about? August is our main character. She has just moved to New York. She is living in Brooklyn. She finds herself in an apartment with an interesting group of people, and she is slowly trying to make her life for herself. She is distancing herself from her mom, and she wants to kind of carve her own path, and she's not quite sure what she wants to do. So she's enrolled in a college, she gets a job at a diner, and she runs into a girl named Jane on the Q train, and she keeps running into Jane on the Q train even when she takes the train at different times, and she slowly starts to figure out that maybe their meetings aren't quite so much a coincidence, and there might be a little like sci-fi magical aspect to this book. There definitely is, not might. And I really loved this book. Personally, for me, it's like a 4.5 5-star read. I mean, I've read it 3 times now. I just love the characters. I am a big fan of Casey's writing. I really enjoyed Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I was super excited for this, and yeah, I loved it. I also finished up Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard in the month of June. I had been reading it since April. I had read a majority of it by the beginning of May, and then just with finals and then starting a new job, kind of fell into this slump, because I was only really able to read like a page or 2 a day of the physical book, and I knew that I was at the point in the book where I needed to just sit with it for 2 hours and finish it. We were really reaching the climax, and I did not have the time to dedicate to it. So I finally finished it in June, and I really enjoyed it. I think it is a wonderful YA high fantasy, and I think it's a wonderful addition to the YA genre. I love the way Victoria writes. I love the way she wrote these characters. And so just to give a brief plot synopsis, we have a band of misfits who come together to save the realm. There are these things called spindles, which are essentially portals to other universes, and they have been closed. Someone is opening them and bringing creatures to this world, and the group that is sent to stop them fails. So who is the B team when those things happen, right? Because we're so used to seeing like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, where the first people that go are the ones that win. But in this case, they don't. And so this band of misfits comes together, and they are trying to figure out how they are going to stop them. And I think the first book was a really wonderful setup. It is high fantasy, so it's definitely for lovers of that genre, and even people that have kind of like gotten more and more into high fantasy, even like the lower ends of high fantasy, and are ready to kind of like take that leap and then eventually move into adult high fantasy. I thought it was really great. And I think one of the things I liked the most about this was Victoria did not spend a ton of time focusing on the romantic relationships in this, which I find a lot of the time in YA fantasy and YA high fantasy, there is a big push on the romance, even if it is a subplot. And Realm Breaker really did focus on the quest and the characters and the character interactions, which just I really enjoy. That's kind of like where I fall into loving fantasy the most. So I'm very, very excited for the second book to come out, which she's working on right now. I did reread The Invisible Life of Maddie LaRue, which is up on my shelf there, but it's tucked under so many things that I don't want to pull it out. I love Addie so much. This was my third reread of it, I think. And I did listen to the audiobook, which is narrated by Julia Whalen, who narrated Malibu Rising. And I love it. I love Victoria Schwab. She's one of my favorite writers. And Addie just is one of those books that has definitely come into my life at the right time. And I just love her with my whole heart, and she's very quickly become a comfort read for me. Then I read City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, and I read the second book, Kingdom of Copper, immediately after. I have not read the third book yet. I'm kind of saving it because I blasted through the first two and just wanted a second to really think about this world. It is a wonderful adult fantasy. I am beyond obsessed with it now, and it's been on my radar for a couple months, and I was putting it off, and I'm so glad I finally read it because, oh my God, I needed this in my life. We have our main character who doesn't know that she necessarily has some magical abilities until one day she summons a djinn soldier from the dead, and he takes her to the City of Brass, where she finds out that there are people like her, and she came from a family and she is trying to find her place in this world. So there is so much magic and political intrigue and like religious aspects in all of this, and I can't even say, I honestly feel like I can't even put into words how much I enjoyed these two books, because they were just good, which is not helpful, but they were just really fantastic. And I'm very excited to read Empire of Gold, right? Yes, Empire of Gold. Then I read Hang the Moon by Alexandria Bellafleur. This is the second book in the series. The first book was Written in the Stars, which came out in 2020. And in that book, we met Darcy and Elle, and Brendan, who was kind of a side character in the first book. And now he is one of the main characters. He is Darcy's brother, and we get to meet Darcy's best friend, Annie. And I loved this book. I loved it so much. Annie comes to visit Darcy in Seattle, and her and Brendan end up hanging out a lot, and Brendan quickly susses out that Annie believes that romance is dead, and he is going to prove to her that it is not by recreating the grand gesture moments of some very famous rom-coms, because a lot of them take place in Seattle. And I love Alexandria's writing. It's fun and flirty. The banter is fantastic. You gotta work a little bit for the spice, but once you get there, it's great. And Annie just really resonated with me so much so that I went and spoke with my therapist about it, because I felt like this book felt a little bit like therapy for me. But it was wonderful. It was, I get so tongue-tied when I talk about books that I really enjoyed. It was just so much fun. I was laughing, I cried, I wept during this book, which did not expect going into a rom-com at all. But I still really loved it. And we just got the announcement for the third book in the series, which I'm very, very excited about. So that's Hang the Moon. Then I read The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. A lot of the books that I read in June were ones that came out the first week of June. There were so many incredible books released. It was kind of crazy. And this was a 5-star read for me. It's a high fantasy inspired by Hungarian history and Jewish mythology, and I cannot put into words just how much I loved this book. So this book follows Eva Kay, who is from a pagan village, and in this world, the Woodsmen come to their village once a year. They are sent by the king of the kingdom to take a seer back to the king, where he does with them what he wants. Most likely he is using their magic, even though in the religion he belongs to, they are trying to root out and get rid of the pagans. So there's this big push and pull between religion and magic, and it's really, really well done. And we meet Eva Kay, who is a villager. I think I said that. Already losing my train of thought. And she does not possess any magic. Her mother was a seer. Most girls that are born in this village that are not seers they don't really make it very long because there is little to no use for them. And on this particular day, when the Woodsmen come, she is sacrificed by the head of her village to impersonate a seer. And she doesn't know why, she doesn't know how she's going to survive, and she goes with the Woodsmen and the adventure begins. And it is just so wonderful. There is an enemies to lovers romance in there, but it is so beautifully threaded throughout the plot of this book seamlessly that I just adored it. I adored it. And I will definitely be rereading this book because it was so freaking wonderful. Also, the cover is absolutely stunning. And I cannot recommend this enough, especially if you love fantasy. 2 more books, let's go. So I did listen to the audiobook of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I simply adored this book. I adored it. It was wonderful. And I have heard so much about this book. I hear people talk about how much they love this book, but I rarely hear people give a plot synopsis. So I'm gonna do my best to just give a little sprinkling. So Evelyn was a film star. She is in her 70s, 80s, and she is auctioning off a bunch of her dresses to give money to charity. And she agrees to, or seeks out rather, a journalist to do a piece on her, or so we think. Her life has been very much in the public eye as a film star. She had 7 husbands. People are constantly speculating why, and how she kind of stayed in this spotlight for so long. And you come to find out that Evelyn really did manipulate the stories that were told about her in the media. She created the narrative that the public saw, and she is now taking control of her narrative. And she is going to be writing a memoir with this person that she has sought out, and she wants to tell her story. And you will find out who her great love was, and it is just so wonderful. Like I said with Malibu Rising, Taylor does a wonderful job of writing about these celebrity personas while still making them human and grounding them in their humanity. And it was full of like the glamour of 1950s and 60s Hollywood while still remaining very raw and real, and I loved this book. I loved it so much I bought it because I listened to the audiobook. And the last book that I read, yes, I did read a lot of books in June, was Ace of Spades. I am going to butcher this author's name. Farida Abike Iyemiede. Oh no, oh no. The book was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. Everybody was hyping up this book in June. Everybody was saying, you have to read this book, you have to read this book. It's Gossip Girl meets Get Out, you have to read this book. And I said, okay. I had to come clean my apartment, so I put on the audiobook and was scrubbing floors and dusting and doing so much while listening to this audiobook, and it was fantastic. It is absolutely marketed perfectly. It is Gossip Girl meets Get Out. And if you have seen Get Out, you are going to be able to sort of figure out where the plot of the book is going. I had not seen Get Out, but I had a feeling based off of the trailers. And it's about these two students at a private school who go in on the first day of senior year. They think nothing strange is going on. They have a new headmaster, which is a little weird. There are a couple off things happening, but nothing that people are really chatting about. And then an anonymous texter sends out a message about them. And very quickly, their skeletons are coming out of their closet, and it's only the two of them, with one or two other students being brought in as like adjacent to their stories. And so they're trying to figure out who this anonymous texter is, who is going by the name of Aces. Why are they suddenly doing this? Because the things that they are putting out there are going to ruin their chances of getting into good colleges. So it was really entertaining. I was just very, very entertained. The one thing for me about that book was I felt like the climax didn't quite reach the height that I hoped it would, but overall, I really, really enjoyed it. And I think if you're a fan of Pretty Little Liars, you will enjoy this book. And I'm not a big thriller reader. I've been saying for months that I want to get into thriller. And I think if I can find thrillers that have a lot of the aspects that were in this book, I will be able to get into that genre, because it had me by the throat. I needed to know what happened in this book. So I definitely would recommend it if it's something you're in the mood for. Oh my God. I'm exhausted. We did it. Those are all the books that I read in June. It was a lot. It was a big month. It was a big month for me, but a lot of really fantastic books, and a lot of books that I definitely would recommend. So let me know if you like this style of video, if you like the little plot synopsis along with my feelings on the book, because I will obviously be tweaking this moving forward. But this was my first monthly wrap up. Oh my gosh. And we'll see when I get around to July's. Who knows? Maybe I'll get it out at the beginning of August. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Comment down below and let me know what your favorite book that you read in June or July, because we're almost done with July at this point, was, and we can chat about it in the comments. I will have all my social medias up on the screen and down in the description box if you want to go ahead and follow me over there. And I will see y'all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye!